Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sitdown. This is a very overdue review, and granted, that happens sometimes, but this is one I should have been all over because I was so psyched for this movie. Saw it the first week, and it was available for SVOD, that kind of premium video-on-demand rental. But what was nice is you could also buy it, so for an extra $5, I bought the movie because I was like, this is one of my favorite things in the world. Didn't quite turn out exactly how I thought it would. I liked the movie, but I was not as excited about it as I thought I would be. And that sometimes makes me drag my feet on a review. But it is going to primarily feature in this week's Margarita Monday meetup, featuring my buddy, 3D animator Mike Driscoll. And wanting to talk about animation, I was like, oh, this movie would be a perfect springboard because it was the last one to come out, and it does some really cool things that we haven't really seen 3D animation try or succeed as well as it does here. So I was like, you guys should probably hear my thoughts on this movie before we get to the Margarita Monday Meetup podcast. So boom, a little tease for what's coming a little bit later on in the day. So if you're wondering what we are talking about, why don't you pull up a chair, man, take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler free into Scoob. Now, like I said, I like this movie. I think this movie is a lot of fun. I think this movie is very family friendly. I think kids and parents can all enjoy this movie together. The animation is beautiful, but it's also bright and vibrant and a lot of fun. And I think all of that works toward, wanting to take your kids or, getting your kids to gather around the TV at night to watch a movie. The other thing I love about this movie is it is a great introductory piece into some of my all-time favorite Saturday morning cartoons. Because this movie isn't just about Scooby-Doo. Oh, no, 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 no. The Mystery Inc. gang, they're all in there, and it's definitely their story. But they share it with a lot of Hanna-Barbera characters because it seems like Warner Brothers might be trying to build a Hanna-Barbera universe. And this movie, I think, is the perfect way to introduce a new generation to all these characters. One, Scooby-Doo is gotta be one of the most recognizable cartoons of all time. Even when he's not on the big screen too often, or there aren't tons of new things coming out for him, kids still know who Scooby-Doo is because their parents love Scooby-Doo, and it's one of the easiest cartoons to be like, you could watch this, doesn't matter how old it is, it still plays really well. So you take that, and that the kids will be interested in the movie because of Scoob, and you introduce all these other things that I grew up loving, and I love that stuff. That is also the thing, though, that I disliked about the movie, because it doesn't feel like a real Scooby-Doo movie. It really feels like a Hanna-Barbera universe movie. And if Warner Brothers can pull off a Hanna-Barbera universe, whether they're using this type of animation for television shows on HBO Max, or if they're going to do more movies that could be HBO Max exclusives, or stuff that goes out to the big screen, whatever. If you actually pull off a Hanna-Barbera animated universe, take all of my money, and I will, be much more forgiving in the fact that this wasn't a traditional Scoob movie. It's just like, I guess the other thing is just, this movie wasn't made for me. It's made for that generation of people they're trying to bring in because Warner Brothers knows they got us in the bag for anything Hanna-Barbera, man. Like, that is, kids nowadays don't understand what Saturday morning cartoons are, man. Like, I was up at 6 a.m. on Saturday, earlier than I was ever up for a day of school. Couldn't miss them Saturday morning cartoons, man. And it started with all the Hanna-Barbera stuff, the Flintstones, because my parents introduced that to me, and when I have kids, I will totally introduce it to them because that's the stuff that just made you just love cartoons. The wacky, zany way they could pull that stuff off was wonderful. And it's a cool idea to think that there could be a new generation of fans that start watching these things, But I, as a Scooby-Doo fan, was really hoping for a solid Scooby-Doo movie, and the trailers seemed like they were going to give it to me. And I think it's not even the Dick Dastardly thing. Typically, Scooby-Doo villains are held all the way to the end. Even in the movies. The movies tend to play with more actual supernatural elements than the show. The show would always be like, oh, some guy's on a wire and like it's a mask. Whereas the movies, I think there are supernatural elements that were legitimately happening that weren't, like a trick always. So like that stuff plays, and the fact that he's the villain the whole time, I think works because I think the Dick Dastardly stuff is really good in this movie. The him and Muttley stuff, specifically toward the end of the film. Oh my gosh, dude! I was like, way to make me love these characters all over again. Where I think this movie stumbles is the insertion of Blue Falcon, Dynamite, and Dee Dee Skies. Because it kind of breaks the team up for far longer than normal. Usually a Scooby-Doo movie is pretty self-contained to either an island or a mansion or a hotel or something of that nature, where this movie kind of turns into like a globe-hopping type superhero movie because you bring some superheroes into the film, and it gets really, really big. And the problem with that is when you have Scooby-Doo and Shaggy go on this side tangent with Blue Falcon and Dynamite, it's not like they're just going on a little excursion and then they come back to the main group, which is how things usually work in these movies. They go pretty much the entire movie without, Daphne, Freddy, and Velma. And I was missing that stuff because there's even a point, mild spoiler, where like Daphne makes a joke and like she's kind of doing something weird and you're like, what is going on? And they kind of reference the fact that like, well, if Scooby and Shag were here, they'd probably like trip over something and break this or fall off of this, and like a door or something would open to help move things along. And while I love that they referenced it, I wanted to see that stuff. And that, that's the thing that was a little disappointing for me in the movie. That being said, like I said, I think it's a really enjoyable movie. Like, even though it's bigger than a normal Scooby movie, and you do have this bit where the team is separate for a while, and they pull on some strings that I'm like, that's weird to do. It's still enjoyable. It's fun to watch. It's a fun, adventure. And the animation is so freaking good. Now, the thing I love about this animation is, unlike most 3D animation, we've seen a lot of 2D characters turned into 3D animated characters. I mean, look at Disney. They did it with all the princesses in the last Wreck-It Ralph movie. And some of them work really well, and some of them were like, that's a little weird. But they look like 3D animated versions of themselves. They don't look like the 2D cartoons. And somehow, Warner Brothers Animation found a way to make this 3D animated movie look like the 2D animation. It's wild. The characters are spot on, where like it honestly looks like, oh, it's the same 2D characters I've always been watching, just now like if I look this way, it's a three-dimensional character. It's not flat. And like even the animation styles, there's moments in the movie where old school cartoons could do wacky things, man. Like they would do really strange things with bodies or how they would spin, and you'd get those boink zoink like funny noises. They incorporate all of that stuff into the movie, and when it happens, I lit up, man, like a freaking lighthouse, because I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen anyone do 3D animation like that, like making 3D animation function like 2D animation. And what's really cool is, whether it's Disney or Pixar or Illumination or, Nickelodeon. Well, no, not so much Nickelodeon, but maybe. The thing that I've noticed with a lot of these 3D animated films is while the main characters that we're with all the time have that cartoon feel to them, they feel tangible. Feels like you can grab them. But the backgrounds look real. The last Toy Story movie, when they're in that like antique shop or whatever it is, and like you got the chandelier and all, everything looked real. Like it was like animated characters in the real world. Same with cars moving on the highway. Look at Frozen too. The water looks and functions like real water. What's cool about Scoob is that the animation for all the background stuff looks real, but it still has that cartoon vibe to it. The way that like you do the characters, where it's like, hey, we can make them look tangible, but they still look like the cartoons. And I love that stuff because I'm an old school classic animation person. And like I said, the way that it's bright and colorful and vibrant, just everything with the animation in this movie, I think works. And I would love to see this animation. Hopefully it's not like super, super expensive. I don't know how those things work, but I would love to see, like if, like I mentioned, HBO Max, maybe you launch some 3D animated like TV show. Like I would watch this animation in little chunks like I would Saturday morning cartoons all day long. It's absolutely gorgeous. Now on top of that, like I said, I think the movie's enjoyable. There's a lot of Hanna-Barbera in here, and yes, there are characters that we know right off the bat that we've already mentioned. But look, just keep your eyes peeled, man. If you're a Hanna-Barbera fan, you're going to see references to almost every major Hanna-Barbera character you know. And just to help without spoiling it, like the main strip in what looks like, like California, kind of looks like Venice Beach almost. That strip, pay attention to the shops, the stores, lots of things in that strip are references to characters, creators, things of that nature. Really, really cool. Daphne, Velma, and Freddy drive a couple times in the movie, and one time during the day, you'll see something near them as they pass it. That's a reference to something, and then it's the same thing at night. They'll drive past something that has a reference. You're like, oh man, that's awesome. Then there is a bit where Scooby and Shaggy end up like hiding in an arcade. Literally everything in the arcade is some sort of callback or Easter egg or shout out to a Hanna-Barbera show or character. I mean, you look at the arcade games, you look at the posters on the wall, all of it, man. It's just everything, and you're just like, oh my gosh, the reference, like, that's what makes me think that they might try to pull off a full universe, because they hinted at lots of stuff, man, and if they do it, oh god, it's gonna be awesome. It really is gonna be awesome, and that'll make me love this movie because birthplace. And like I said, I thought they did a really good job as far as building the universe. Like, I could see where it's like, oh, now you can spin off all these things and you're just ready to go. You come back down to those smaller stories because you kind of have hinted that they're all there, and then you could always cross these characters over as you want, which is what they would do in the cartoons back in the day too. So like, just all that stuff, like I loved seeing it in the background. Now there's one other thing that we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about any of the voice talent, and I think the voice talent in the movie does a fine job. I just generally have an issue with, when it comes to an animated film, if it's not something new, especially like if it's something like Scooby-Doo, where a lot of the original or second, third wave of voice actors for these characters, people who voiced these, characters for decades, are still alive. I mean, perfect example, Frank Welker is in the movie as Scooby-Doo. Now, not the original Scooby-Doo, but I think he was in, it was kind of a mixture. He was in the early days as well. But he's the original Freddy. So you have a guy who's voiced Scooby-Doo from back in the original run days and is the original voice of Freddy. Why not just have him do Freddy? And why not bring back, like, I hate when you see the voice actors that do all the voicing get kind of snubbed when things go to the big screen. That being said, I think everybody here does, an okay job. I don't think there's anything specifically standoutish for Amanda Seyfried as Daphne or Gina Rodriguez as Velma. They both do a fine job. But like I said, because of that separation and how much other stuff is in the movie, we don't get a ton of time with that group. The one cool thing I did like is Gina Rodriguez voicing Velma. They kind of gave Velma a more Hispanic feel. It's very, very subtle, and it's in no way where you go, oh man, like, that's not my Velma Dinkley. But like, it's enough where you're like, oh yeah, she totally registers Hispanic, which is awesome because Gina Rodriguez is Hispanic. But it still looks like Velma. So I thought stuff like that was kind of cool for that character. But like I said, I mean, they're both fine, just nothing really that stands out super big for them. I think of all of the voice acting in this movie, Zac Efron as Freddy, even though you had the original Freddy in the movie and you could have used him, is actually the one who nails it the best. I think he is spot on, like, with Freddy. Like, his timing, his delivery, the tone and sound of his voice worked really well. Like, if I was gonna say anybody did the best job, I think Zac Efron nailed Freddy. Would I have preferred to have heard Mr. Welker? Of course. But given what we're given, I thought Zac Efron crushed it. Now, while we have, Frank Welker doing Scooby-Doo, Shaggy, you couldn't bring back Casey Kasem because Casey Kasem passed away. So they went with Will Forte. And I remember watching the trailers going, oh man, Will Forte is going to crush it. He sounds just like Shaggy. I think every time he sounds just like Shaggy was in the trailer. The majority of the movie, he's a little bit higher of a register, and it kind of sounds like someone doing a Shaggy impersonation. And it's not that he did a bad job, it's just, it was noticeable enough where the entire movie, I was just going, why would nobody call Matthew Lillard? Matthew Lillard is the only person besides Casey Kasem, I think, that is ever nailed Shaggy to the point where it's like, that is Shaggy. Like, I don't even think twice. You watch those live action movies, you forget that it's Matthew Lillard. He does such a good job. And the whole movie, I just went, man, I wish Matthew Lillard was voicing Shaggy right now, because it's just slightly too high. And like I said, I think Will does a fine job, but it just wasn't quite my Shaggy. And the other thing that kind of bummed me out too was that they didn't use Will Forte to voice young Shaggy when they do, the Pup Named Scooby-Doo animation stuff. What was weird is that the character didn't sound like Shaggy. Like, Casey Kasem voiced young Shaggy in the Pup Named Scooby-Doo, so even though he changed it to sound younger, he still sounded like Shaggy. This just sounded like a young kid that, like, you're like, yeah, I can see him become Shaggy, but he didn't have any identifiable things that were Shaggy from a voice work standpoint. I was like, that's kind of weird. But yeah, I think I would have preferred Matthew Lillard. I think if Matthew Lillard was in this movie, a lot of the things I had issue with, I would have forgotten, because I would have just been like, oh man, it's so good. Like, having Lillard with Welker, like, that's amazing. Like, that would have been that's all I would have needed. But Will Forte, I think, does a good enough job where it's like, it's not like he's not Shaggy. He just doesn't quite sound as close as Matthew Lillard got to Casey Kasem. So that's the main gang. And like I said, I think they all do fine jobs. Jason Isaacs might do the best voice work in the entire movie. His Dick Dastardly is phenomenal, man. Like, he absolutely, you could tell Jason Isaacs probably grew up watching some Dick Dastardly stuff, because he absolutely nails it. And when Muttley shows up and starts, I won't spoil anything, but like, you hear him do some things, razum, that you would hear Muttley, and to see those interactions, I love that stuff. The first time you hear razum from Muttley, I was like, oh, that's amazing. It's so good. And their relationship and the way they worked, I thought was perfect. Like, it's one of those things, like I said, kind of bums me out that, like, my favorite part of the movie, besides Scooby-Doo, because obviously Frank Welker's a legend, and he is Scooby-Doo, the Dick Dastardly stuff, I think, was probably my favorite stuff in the movie. And there's cool nods to him, where he came from. He's got the ship, pay attention to it. It kind of looks like something you might be familiar with. There are other nods to where he comes from throughout the whole movie, both for him and Muttley, which I thought were really, really awesome. But I just love Jason Isaacs' performance. Mark Wahlberg, fine. It's, like I said, they kind of change up some of the characters. Blue Falcon and Dynamite happen to be two of those characters. And what they asked, Mark Wahlberg to do works. And I think it would work quite well for kids now. I'll be like, oh yeah, man, I like that. Haha. Like, and it fits what Wahlberg can do. Teaming up with Wahlberg is Ken Jeong, doing Dynamite. And while he doesn't sound like the Dynamite you're familiar with, I kind of dug the take they had on it. I wish they would have explained why there was such a change in the way they kind of explain what's up with Blue Falcon. Well, they do explain what's up with Blue Falcon, but they don't really explain why Dynamite is kind of different in this movie. That being said, I thought Ken Jeong did a really good job with what he was asked to do. And if you could have shown, maybe just quickly, I don't know, it's like, now I'm talking about, like, give me more stuff that wasn't Scooby-Doo, guys. But like, if you could have just shown me a little bit of like what would have caused the evolution that happens, I think you can figure it out if you think about it, and I think it works. But I thought, I don't know, I liked what Ken Jeong did. Now there's one other character, I can't remember. Sorry, Dee Skies. I'm like totally skipping right over. Kiersey Clemens voices her. Same thing. Like, I thought she was good. Didn't have any complaints. Just nothing really popped for me there. Now there is one other voice in the movie, and one other character. I don't remember if he shows up in any of the trailers, so I won't spoil who he is, but he's voiced by Tracy Morgan. And that might be the most, like, of all the voices, the minute you start hearing Tracy, he's not doing too much of a variation on his voice. Like, there's a little bit of one, but it's like a Tracy Morgan voice. So as soon as it comes out of this character's mouth, it sounds exactly like Tracy Morgan and nothing like what the character was from the cartoons, which usually irks me. But I love Tracy Morgan so freaking much, and the idea of him voicing this character, I just had, you could tell he had so much fun with it, and I just loved it because I just adore Tracy Morgan. So there you go, man. That was a whole lot of Scoob conversation. But they packed a whole lot into this movie. And like I said, I think overall the movie works. I think it's a fun family flick. I just wanted more of a classic Scooby-Doo movie. And the beginning certainly makes it feel like you're going to get that. There's one thing I did not mention. The transition from Pup Named Scooby-Doo to, the adult versions of the characters is the most amazing thing in the movie. What they do to transition those characters to where they are, I almost wept because it was so beautiful and something I never in a million years saw coming. And again, is one of those reasons where it's like, you gave me that, which is like, one of the most glorious Scooby-Doo things I've seen in any of the Scooby-Doo movies in years. I just wish the rest of the movie would have kept doing stuff like that. But, like I said, if you do launch an actual Hanna-Barbera universe where I'm seeing, Dick Dastardly in movies and Blue Falcon and Magilla Gorilla, you give me that, and then you make another Scoob, like Scoob 2, and it's a legit Scooby movie, then I'm just happy with all of it. I have no issues, no complaints whatsoever. Just do that. Do that for me, Warner Brothers, and I will be glad that this Scooby movie launched all of that. There is one other thing that I didn't mention. That there's a character that pops up, famous character, and I thought that was a wonderful nod to the original Scooby-Doo movies, where you would have like a semi-celebrity like the Harlem Globetrotters, or like they'd have different, like Batman and Robin, like not the top tier echelon of celebrities, but like that tier 2 below that would pop onto those movies. When you see this character pop up, I went, oh man, that's such a cool nod to what they used to do. So like I said, this movie does lots of great things, both for Scooby-Doo and for the Hanna-Barbera universe. I just wished it would have felt more like a Scooby-Doo movie. But I highly recommend it. I think kids and nostalgics alike, even though they twist and change a couple things about things that I'm nostalgic about, overall, when those things come up on the screen, you're just like, I can't believe that I'm seeing this. Like, it's awesome that we live in a world where that could be on screen and work. I wish I could have seen it in the movie theater, man. But like I said, it's a fun movie. It's a great Hanna-Barbera movie. Just wish it was a little bit better of a Scooby movie. So there you go, man. Those are all the Seaman's thoughts on a big Scooby-Doo movie, aka Scoob. Now I want to know what you're thinking, man. Have you rented or bought, Scoob on demand? Have you checked it out? What did you think? Did you love it the whole way through? Did you wish it was more of a Scooby film? Do you not really notice that like it felt kind of different? Are you of the younger variety, more unfamiliar with the Hanna-Barbera stuff? Did them putting all that stuff in there, if you are an old school fan like me, did you love seeing it? Or was it too much? And if you were unfamiliar, like, did it interest you? Did any of the Hanna-Barbera stuff they throw in, if you're not familiar with those cartoons, pique your interest in, like, I would watch more of this? Because if it did, then they did their job. And we should all hopefully be happy. So anything you're thinking about Scoob, Hanna-Barbera, what Warner Brothers is hopefully cooking up with all this, my thoughts, your thoughts, everything down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you guys down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new and you want to come show some support, show some love, join the squad, man. Come join the Cinema Sit-Down squad. Really easy to do. Jump over there, man. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the Seaman's Cinema Sit-Down, I'm the Seaman. I'm signing off. Peace. Peace. Oh. Now a little Scooby. Well, I'll be. You guys are still here. You must be looking for some more content. Well, don't worry. Seaman's got you covered, man. You got videos like this guy and this guy. And if you haven't yet, and you want to come check out all the Seaman goodies, join the Cinema Sit-Down squad, man. Hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to hit the little bell down below that, too, so you can get alerts every time I make new videos.